Hey everyone, welcome back to Casey3D Sparks. Today we are going to be continuing our custom dungeon build. So I know last week we kind of took a small break with the snake, so that was pretty cool. I hope you guys enjoyed that tutorial, but today we're going to be jumping into more of the scenery stuff. So I thought, we kind of need some light in this dungeon. Can't see anything. So I want to make some braziers to put in some of the corners and stuff like that. So let's hop over to a fresh layer. Make sure that if you go to your scenes tab, you're working in the unit you would prefer. And for me, I'll be working in inches, and I changed the scale of my grid floor to 1/4 of an inch. To start, we'll do Shift A mesh, and I want to start with a cube. Obviously, I don't want it to be 6 inches large, so let's just go ahead and scale that way down. And then I want to scale it about that way. So I'm not doing anything precise. I'm just kind of getting the approximation. So around 1/2 inch for the Z, and then X and Y I have at like 216, which I think I might go ahead and make a little bigger. And when we put this in our regular dungeon, we'll size it to be exactly how we want, but this is a good starting point. I'm gonna go ahead, tab into edit mode, do Control R and add one loop this way. So just left click, right click, so it stays in the center. Control R to add one going the opposite way. Going into front view, I'll just go ahead and deselect with A, wireframe with Z, B for border select, go ahead and grab this edge over here, X and delete those vertices, and we're also going to do that to this side over here, X, delete those vertices, so we're just left with this corner. Go over here to your wrench tool, add modifier, mirror, and we'll go ahead, so you see it added on the left side, but we also want to go ahead and add it on the back. So we'll check the Y. So we only have to model this one corner. So I'm going to go back into front view, and we're going to set up some more loops. So we'll do Control R, and I only want to do one. I don't want to do two, and you'll see why in a second. So I want to do left click, right click, Control R, left click, right click, and then I do want another loop. But the reason I didn't do the scroll up to add 2 loops is because I wanted it further out. I wanted it this dimension. So I'll go ahead, add that loop as well. And horizontally, we'll go ahead and do the scroll up. So we get 2 loops this way, do S and Z, and bring that up to about there. A little bit further down. I'm trying to make it kind of match this face and this face, which it's pretty close. We could certainly bring these a little closer together, but no pressure to have it exact. Switch to face select. I'm going to go ahead and grab these faces with these 2 and the ones on the bottom. I'm just going to go ahead and go into top view, do E to extrude, and instead of hitting escape, I'm just going to go ahead and let it ride out on the blue line that shows up. So we'll bring that out to maybe about there. Looks pretty good. It brings it out the exact same on each side, so I like that. For the top, I also want it to come up, so we'll make sure we grab this section here, do E to extrude. I'm gonna go into front view and bring that up, but I'm only gonna bring it up so it's almost, this face is like half the height of this face. I think that looks pretty good. So we're getting kind of like the pedestal built up for what's actually going to hold the bowl that will be the actual fire holder. Now I want to add a little bit more decoration to this. So I thought it'd be cool to add kind of like a banner on this part, which if we add it here, it'll automatically add to the back. So it'll be just on 2 sides. I don't want it on every side, so I think that'll be kind of a cool variation. So to do the banner, because I don't want to have 2 banners on each side of this face, we'll go ahead and apply clipping. So make sure in your mirror modifier, you go ahead and check that clipping box now. And we'll do E to extrude, just hit escape. I'm gonna go into front view, and we're gonna hit S and just size it down, which You'll notice because of the mirror modifier, it sizes a lot more on the Z axis rather than the X. So get your height situated first. I think I want mine to be about that tall, looks pretty good. But for the X, I know I don't want it this wide. So I'm gonna go ahead and push this in pretty far. Maybe about there. Looks pretty good, and we can always adjust it after. I'm gonna go into top view, do E to extrude, and pull it out to about there. So before we start adding more detail in, I'm gonna go ahead over here and do a subdivision surface modifier. And we're gonna have to sharpen most things. So I'm just gonna switch back to face select, or vertex select mode. Grab basically everything except for our banner and do Shift E and sharpen that back up so we get that definition back. And then I definitely want this sharpened. And we'll go ahead and sharpen this. As well as these corners. Oops. Okay, so now that we have that all straightened up, you'll notice that there's some discoloring here. So if you go into wireframe view, you'll see the mesh is kind of acting up a little bit. To get rid of that, go ahead and we'll select this edge as well. We might as well sharpen that up. And that one's already sharp, so there's no discoloring there. So that worked out well. I want my banner to have some notches in it. So for the top one, I'm gonna grab this edge here, pull that down, and I'll need to sharpen it. I think that looks pretty good. I'm gonna do kind of the same on the bottom, but it's going to be much more dramatic. Kind of like that. And if you want, you could certainly leave it so it has this nice swooping edge. But for me, I want mine to be pretty defined, so I'm gonna go ahead and sharpen that as well. And then what I wanna do to add a little bit more just definition to this, I'm gonna add a loop, bring it down here, and I wanna bring this edge out. Maybe push this back in a little bit, just to give it a little bit more. Bring this out a little. That looks cool. Oh, and I also want to make sure this edge is sharp as well. Okay. So there is our banner. And then once we print it out, we can paint on a cool symbol to it. But for how it's actually mounted to the pedestal itself, there's a couple different ways, but what I found to be kind of the coolest looking was a rod, kind of like a, I don't know, a curtain rod hanging through. So we'll go ahead, tab out of edit mode. I'm gonna do Shift A, and we're gonna do a UV sphere. I'm gonna go into side view actually, and we're just gonna go ahead and hit align to view, but I'm not gonna change any of the dimensions that it already comes with, the 32, 16, that's fine. And we'll just manually size this down real quick. Push that over, go ahead and focus in on it, maybe size it down a little more. Just like this. Tab into edit mode. And what we're gonna do with this is go ahead, just deselect everything and go into wireframe view. And I think I wanna go ahead and delete this many rings. So let's grab that, vertices. So we'll do Alt right click on this loop here. We're just gonna hit E to extrude and pull that out. Oh, except we have to make sure we turn off our proportional editing. So we'll just string that out. We'll put that about at the Z axis. I'm just gonna go ahead and tab out of edit mode because we need our origin point to be at the cursor. So go ahead and reset that, and then we can do add modifier, mirror, and we'll just change that to the Z axis and undo the X. Tab back into edit mode, and since, you know, make sure you have clipping on, once it meets at that axis, it will basically snap together and then it won't come apart. Perfect. So we have that little piece created. So before we apply the mirror modifier, we'll go ahead and move this back. So I'm gonna just pull it along the Y. And we need to size this down. Go into side view and wireframe so we can see it easier. About there. Still a little large, so let's go ahead and size that down some more, which is a little tricky since our origin isn't on there. So what I'm going to do is actually go ahead and apply our mirror modifier, since we'll probably be fine with that, and then go ahead and reset our origin to the geometry so it's a lot easier to move and size and it isn't going crazy. Alright, just going to go into wireframe view so we can see it easier again. And size it to about there. Looks pretty good. And I'm going to make sure it's tucked into the pedestal itself so you can see where our vertices or our edges and vertices are. So we can actually pull it out a little bit if we want. Perfect. I like the look of that a lot. I'm going to go ahead and save this real quick. And then what we'll do is go ahead and do Shift D so we can get a duplicate. Let's go to top view and we'll pull our duplicate to the other side and just make sure it's kind of sticking out at the same. Looks good. Now we'll go ahead, select everything, do Control A, do location, and then we'll do Control A, rotation and scale. Go ahead with our brazier selected. To make sure, you know, everything goes well and in case we have any issues in the future, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this as well. Just hide our first one. So for this brazier, I'm going to apply the mirror and the subdivision surface modifier. And then we can go ahead and add a union Boolean modifier. And we'll just go ahead and copy that because obviously we need to. So I'll select our first sphere and our second sphere. And I'm just going to go ahead and hide those. And they didn't disappear, so it should have worked. So I'm just going to apply both, tab into edit mode. Oops. And we can make sure there's nothing extra. It should still be hollow, which looks like they applied beautifully. Awesome. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that again for our new mesh. Looks good. So now, of course, we want to go ahead and do a bowl or basin that's going to actually contain the fire. If you wanted it sprouting right out the top of this, you certainly could, but I thought it'd be a little bit cooler with kind of like a basin. So let's do Shift A, and I'm going to start with an actual just circle. I don't want to do the 32 though. Usually I like to start with 12 and then add a subdivision surface modifier just because it's easier to manipulate the 12 itself. But that's personal preference. You guys can of course do what you like. And I'm just going to leave it as nothing for the fill type. That's a little large, so we'll go ahead and size that down. And I'm just going to draw it above here for now. Size that down again. And go ahead and tab into edit mode. So that way, when we hit E to extrude, we can see, okay, the normals definitely want to go down first. So we'll create this as our base. Now for the size, we can go ahead and go into wireframe view. And that's actually probably a good size. I like how it's just a little bit way off the corners. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull this down into here. I'm going to do E to extrude, Alt M at center. So that way it finishes that off nicely. And I'm just going to go ahead and grab this, pull this down, maybe about here, size it out, so we can start creating our basin shape. So do E to extrude again, and pull it up to about here. Do Control R, and size this out. I'm going to go ahead and add our subdivision surface. Crank that up to 3 like I usually do, and see how this is looking. I want this actually to be a bit wider. Ooh, yeah, I like this shape a lot, actually. Cool, I'm happy with that. So I want to go ahead, grab this, do E to extrude, and just size that in to start creating a lip. We'll do E to extrude and pull that down. Now, what I usually do for the inside of containers is go ahead and try to make it kind of parallel with the other vertices or edges. So I'll do it just like that. And since we're putting a fire in this, I'm not going to do it all the way down. I'm just going to go ahead and essentially cap this off. So I'm just going to do E to extrude, size that in, E to extrude, Alt M at center. But I do want to go ahead and Alt right click this loop here and Shift E to make it look like it was, you know, this fire or like ash or wood or whatever is separate from the bowl itself. You know, I'd like the lip of this to be a little bit thicker. So we can either do Control R and add in a couple loops, or you could crease it if you wanted it to be like that. I think I would do it like this so that our other edges don't get sharpened as well, which I think I like that version better. Just because it'd be nice to have these sharp lines on the bowl to kind of match with these sharp lines. Yeah, I think I like that design better. So with that, we'll go ahead, go again. I'm just going to select everything, do Control A, location, rotation, and scale. I'm just going to duplicate our basin, hide the first one. For the second one, we'll apply the subdivision. Grab this again, add modifier, Boolean, change that to union. Grab our circle, which we should have renamed, but I haven't been keeping up with renaming things here. Tab into edit mode, and worked out perfectly. Now typically you'd probably want to have created this so there isn't this inside, so you probably would have made the basin a little bit bigger, or you could easily just cap that off. So we could do essentially connect these and then do that to the other side and trap that off. But what would be easier, now that I realize it did that, is undo the Boolean modifier, unhide our circle, and we'll just go ahead, grab it, and size it up. But you'll notice that since our origin is down there, it's going to size a little bit weird. So I'm just going to reset our origin to the geometry again. Oops, except I did it backwards. Origin to geometry. There we go. So we can size that up normally. Perfect. And you can see it's going inside that corner there. Okay. So we'll reapply the location. Add modifier, Boolean, union, and circle. Whoop, hide that. Awesome. Now we don't have that inner triangle in there, which is going to lead to a better mesh for 3D printing. So I highly recommend you change that just in case. But of course, if the basin is smaller and doesn't even touch these, it'd probably be fine. But for mine, I just went ahead and made it a little bit larger, and it doesn't really make a difference. So it does kind of cap off that you can't see these creases anymore, but kind of just makes it look like it was positioned perfectly and carved out perfectly to hold our basin. So, you know, we got some master craftsmen working in our dungeon. It's totally fine. Now, of course, you'll probably want to go ahead and add a fire in the basin. Of course, you could leave it as is. So let's say, you know, we have some basins that are not lit and others that are. So we're gonna go ahead and rename this to be Brazier fireless, so that way we can have one that's put out, and we'll duplicate it, hide our fireless one, and just delete that part. So this one will be the one that has the fire in it. Cool. So the easiest way for me to create a flame is to take it into sculpt mode. Now I've gone over sculpt mode quite a few times before, and I think I've done fire 2 times, maybe 3 at most, but I think it was only twice. So I'll go over the tools that you'll want to use, but then I'm just going to import a flame that I've already created for a fire marker. I think I created maybe last year. And it's actually available for download on Thingiverse if you just want to use the same flame, because fire is such an organic shape. It can be hard. But anyway, if you want to make one yourself, I recommend doing sculpt mode just because it's a lot more freeform. You can certainly model it if you want and then touch it up in sculpt mode. Fire, have fun with it. It's, you know, something that you can certainly play with for a long time. I would suggest starting with either sculpt draw or maybe inflate deflate, but I would say just do sculpt draw first, and I would go ahead and turn this topology thing on so that way it adds geometry as you're sculpting and you're not restricted to the number of vertices and polygons that you already have here. So as you do this, you'll notice that it starts building up nicely for you. So I would just, build up a base, build it up and up and up. And then once you kind of have that, you can either do, and while you're doing that, sorry to backtrack for a second, Symmetry Lock is on, so it's mirroring. So I only was doing the X. You'll notice it's kind of doing the other side at the same time, which is cool. So of course you can turn that off, turn it on to the Y and the Z, have fun with those. And then the snake hook I find really, really fun to use for flames because you can just grab things and it starts to, make nice shapes. So you can pull them out and up. It can be a little finicky until you get the hang of it, but it is a great way to just kind of start pulling up these shapes that look like the flame tongues. So that can be really fun to just mess around with. So if you want a small tame fire, you could just build it up a little bit, but I'm gonna do mine pretty dramatic. So I'm just gonna exit sculpt mode, go back into object, just undo everything that I just did because like I said, I'm just gonna import mine. So let me grab that real quick. So the flame that I have has a base on it because I was using it as a marker for, something was on fire. So I'm just gonna tab into edit mode real quick. Go into side view or front view, whichever. A to deselect, Z for wireframe, B to border select about there. X, delete all those vertices. I was gonna grab that base loop, hit E to extrude, Alt M at center so we can make sure it's a nice solid piece. Tab back out of edit mode, and I'm gonna size that way down. Boop. Right into that basin. Now it's still a little large. I think I'm gonna smush it. Focus in on it and push that in. Maybe even draw it down. It looks like a pretty large fire in there. Oh, it is touching right there. I pull that up a little bit. That looks pretty cool. Okay, I'm happy with that. So again, select everything, Control A, location, rotation, and scale. I should be able to just do Boolean, union, fire marker, hide the fire marker, and hit apply, tab in, and it worked perfectly. Oh, and oh no, we didn't. We did do that part. Sorry, for some reason I thought I forgot to put the rod on the other side, but we didn't. So we are all set. Let's go ahead and move it to our first layer as well as the fireless one. We'll go ahead and move that to our first layer as well since we're going to be using them both. Move that up above the floor tile and just push it over. So they're actually pretty small. I want these to be a lot larger. I wanted them to almost fill up the whole square. Ah, yeah, I want them to be like this. Maybe a little smaller. Yes. Oh, that looks really cool. So we'll see what size that is, and we can kind of make this one similar. So obviously the Z is going to be much, much different. So you're mainly going to be looking at the X and Y, which is just over 1/2 inch. So we'll just size that. Oops. To be close. And of course you could always size it before you add the flame, so that way it is definitely the same size. I kind of jumped the gun on that one. Whoops, wrong button. 5, 2, 8, and 5, 3, 9. 5, 2, 8, and 5, 3, 9. Close enough. We're only one little off of that, so they are basically the same size. That works out perfect. So we can go ahead and populate those throughout our dungeon for some extra light, maybe make some more variations so they have different decorations. Totally up to you guys, but I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I'm pretty happy with the results of this. Hopefully you guys are too. If you went with different decorations, feel free to tweet them at me or anything like that, and I will hopefully soon post some pictures of results of my own prints on my Instagram and maybe Twitter too. So other than that, be sure to leave any questions in the comments below, any suggestions or recommendations, or oh hey, you could have done this way. Totally cool with that. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I put out videos every Tuesday, and I will see you guys next week.